Alright, today's lesson is on area of parallelograms. So this is a review for some of you from the previous grade. It might be new for some of you. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is write down some formulas. The first formula we're going to write down is the area of a parallelogram. And when we do the area of a parallelogram, an example of this could be just like this. And so our area of our parallelogram is going to be base times our height. Okay, this bottom portion here is our base, and then our height is actually how high up it goes, that little dotted line right there. We do not take the other side here because then it's kind of skewed at an angle, so we want to do the base and the height. Now we have the formula for our area of our rectangle, which is going to be our, either we could say base times height as well, or we could do length times width, either one. Alright, so on all geometry problems, you need to make sure that we name our shape. We're going to go ahead and write our formula. The more we write our formulas, the easier it's going to be for us to remember them. We're going to go ahead and fill in the values or substitute the values. And then we're going to go ahead and solve. After we solve our problems, we're going to make sure that we include whatever units we're working with. Okay? So for example, we could say inches squared, we could say meters squared. And if there's no units that go along with it, we say unit squared, we put a u squared there. Alright, so let's try a few examples here. Our first shape is a rectangle. My formula for my rectangle is length times width, or base times height. We're going to substitute in for my length of 13. My width is going to be of 8. And then we go ahead and multiply those together, and we get an answer of 104 feet squared. Okay, and then I added on my units. Alright, number 2, it's a rectangle as well. I'm going to do length times width, which means it's 15.8 times 6. And then when I go ahead and multiply those together, I get 94.8 centimeters squared. And those are my units. Alright, my next shape is a parallelogram, so I'm going to make sure I use my base times my height. Let's write parallelogram. And it's base times height. And so my base is 9. Times my height up and down there is 7. We get an answer of 63, and we're going to add my units in of yards squared. Alright, the next we're going to do is going to be the area of triangles and trapezoids. The formula for the area of a triangle, so area is equal to half base times height. Okay, and the reason that we do half there is because if we look at a rectangle, let's say we cut our rectangle in half here. We're going to shade in. We can see that that's a triangle. So my equation is going to work here because the full area here is base times height, and then I actually cut it in half, and that'll give me the area of that rectangle part. The same thing goes for if I turn it into a parallelogram here. We can cut it like that. Okay. Half of it, the full thing will be base times height, and then half is going to be that triangle right there. Alright, the formula for my trapezoid is area is equal to half. We're going to go ahead and do times the height, base 1 plus base 2. Okay. Alright, if we think about our trapezoid here, okay. Alright, if we cut a rectangle in half here, we can shade in this area right here. Alright, we're going to go ahead and use our bottom portion as our base 1, our top portion as our base 2, and then we're going to use our height over here as well. And then this would be half of the overall rectangle. Okay. Remember that the bases and the heights always have to be at a 90-degree angle. Okay. So my base is at 90 degrees. My base is down there, and then my height goes at 90 degrees. Okay, that's an important part. Same thing goes for if we look at this picture up here. Our base is down here, and then we have our height is at a 90-degree angle. That's why we don't take on our parallelograms just one to the side as our height. Alright, so let's go ahead and apply those equations into these problems right here. So our first problem is our triangle here is our shape. The formula for our triangle is half base times height. We're going to go ahead and substitute our numbers in. So I have half, and then my base is 6, and my height is going to be 2. Multiply those together and I get 6. And I'm going to add my units. Because there's nothing there, I'm going to go ahead and put a u squared for units squared. Number 2, I have another triangle. Okay, so it's half base times height. So it's going to be half times my base, which is 11, times my height, which is 9. Go ahead and multiply those together, and I get an area of 44.5. And again, there's no units, so we're going to do units squared. Number 3 here, we've got a trapezoid this time. Let's go ahead and label it a trapezoid. Okay. Let's go ahead and write our equation as half times height, and then we're going to do base 1 plus base 2. Okay. Let's go ahead and plug it in. We're going to bring down our half. Our height is 3 inches. And then our two bases, one base is 9 inches, plus the other base is 5 inches. Go ahead and plug that into the calculator, and you should get an answer of 21 inches squared. Alright, the last one we're going to go ahead and review is the area of my circle. The formula for the area of my circle is pi r squared. The r is going to stand for my radius, which is going to be half the distance across the circle. The full distance across the circle is my diameter. And my pi can be written as 3.14, which is what we're going to use most of the time, or 22 divided by 7. We're going to make sure you read the directions when you solve a problem, whether you know which one to use or if you need to use the pi button. So we have a few examples here we're going to practice with our equation. Our first one, again, the shape is a circle. We're going to rewrite the formula, pi r squared. We're going to substitute them in, so I'm going to use 3.14 for my pi, times my radius, which is 6 meters, and we're going to square it. Plug it into the calculator and solve it. And I get an answer of 113.04, and then we're going to add in my units, so meters squared. Alright, number 2. Again, it's a circle. Go ahead and label it. Give our equation pi r squared. Let's substitute our numbers in, 3.14 times, and this is a tricky part here. Make sure we're actually only taking the radius. Remember, the radius is half of the distance. So you're going to get problems where you actually see the actual radius given to you, and then you're going to get problems where you have the diameter given to you. If you have a problem with the diameter, make sure you cut it in half. So our radius should only be 4 for that one, and that should be squared. After I plug that into the calculator, I get an answer of area is equal to 50.24, and we're working with feet, so it's feet squared. Alright, number 3 is another circle. Again, pi r squared. Okay, plug it in, we got 3.14 for pi, times my radius. Again, I only do half of it. So half of 13 is 6.5. Okay, and then we square that. And so my area is going to equal to, you get 132.665. If we want to round that to the nearest tenth, 132.7. And we would do centimeters squared, because that's our unit. Okay. So we've just gone over quite a few equations for you. Now you've got some examples for you to try. Go ahead and pause your video. When you do these examples, make sure you draw your figures, 1. Then 2, make sure you name them. values, go ahead and substitute the values, and then go ahead and solve. And at the end, do not forget your units. Make sure whatever you have, centimeters squared, inches squared, centimeters squared. Okay? And if there's no unit, make sure you put unit squared. So go ahead and pause your video and solve those 9 problems, and let's see how you did. Alright. Number 1, you should have written down parallelogram. Got an area of 135 centimeters squared. Number 2 is a rectangle, 18 inches squared. Number 3 was a circle, 113.04 centimeters squared. Number 4 is a triangle, 176 units squared. Number 5 was a trapezoid. Make sure you use the correct equation for that one. It's 57.5 centimeters squared. Number 6 was a rectangle, 124.8 yards squared. Then we have number 7 here. We have 283.4 inches squared, or 0.385. Number 8 was a triangle. Make sure you use the full base there, and then our height. We get 77 units squared. And lastly, for number 9 is a circle. We get 38.5 yards squared, or 38.465 yards squared.